Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Khan, has now formally lodged applications for arrest warrants for 3 leaders of Hamas and for 2 leaders for Israel for their role in the conflict in Gaza. Khan says the head of Hamas in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, the head of the Hamas military wing, Mohammed Ibrahim al-Masri, and the Hamas political bureau head, Ismail Haniyeh, may be guilty of trying to exterminate people, murder people, and for the use of sexual violence and torture. He also says the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and his Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, may have tried to starve civilians to death. They've murdered people intentionally and directed attacks on civilians. Na'eem Jeenah is a senior researcher at the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflection. Na'eem, good afternoon to you. I suppose the first point to look at is that there's been mounting pressure on Khan to issue some kind of arrest warrant, particularly as Israel's offensive in Gaza has led to the deaths of so many people. Why do you think he issued all of these arrest warrants at the same time against both sides? Is he trying to appear even-handed?
Clearly, that's his attempt. And as you know, there's been massive kind of attack against him and the ICC over the past few weeks, as it became known that arrest warrants for Israeli politicians might be on the cards. So this kind of balancing act that he's playing, but slightly unbalanced. I mean, he's got 3 Palestinian names and 2 Israeli names. The statement starts off with the Palestinians and then goes on to the Israelis. So an attempt at balance, but also at appeasing the Israelis and their backers, I think.
I don't know if it matters, but Khan, I think, is a British national. I don't know if that's a factor in all of this. Obviously, I think for many people, they'll see it as a factor.
Yes, I mean, theoretically, it shouldn't be a factor. Remember with the ICJ in December, the South African application, and when it was heard in January, there was lots of speculation about how it would go, precisely because the chairperson or the president of the court was an American and former State Department employee. But she voted with the majority on every single issue, which was in South Africa's favor and not in Israel's favor. So theoretically, it shouldn't make a difference. But there's been lots of speculation, accusations that Khan has a kind of pro-Israeli bent. Whether that is true or not, we'll see. There's been lots of pressure, of course, that something needs to be done after 7 months of the genocide in Gaza. And so now something is being done. Of course, he is just the prosecutor, unlike with the ICJ that I'm speaking about. He's not a judge. And he's awaiting now. So the warrants have not been issued. He has announced that he's applied to the judges to allow him to issue warrants of arrest, and we await the judge's decision now.
The point about time, I mean, it's now 7 months, really, since this conflict started. And I'm not entirely sure if there's any legal reason why he had to wait so long. As you say, pressure had been building for a very long time. Is there any particular event that would mean he could act now but couldn't have acted sooner? Or was the pressure just become too much, perhaps?
I think, well, for one thing, the pressure has become too much. Secondly, that clearly some investigation needs to happen before even reaching this stage. And that would take some time, and that's always made more difficult when one of the parties refuses to cooperate. And in this case, certainly Israel has refused any ICC, ICJ investigation. The special rapporteur, various special rapporteurs from the UN, etc., has refused any of them any kind of access. So that makes this whole process longer. But let's remember that the pressure on Karim Khan has been there from before 7th of October 2023 for a range of other Israeli violations, and he has consistently not acted on them. I think now the weight of UN complaints, for example, is very strong, not only from the Palestinians, and particularly when you see, for example, the accusation that Israel is using starvation as a weapon of war, etc., it becomes much stronger than it ever was before. And when we look at the statement that he's issued, I think it's the first item on the accusations against the 2 Israelis is using starvation as a weapon of war.
We all know that Israel is not going to agree to any finding by the International Criminal Court. The United States, Israel's strongest ally, is not a member of the International Criminal Court. The sort of world in which Netanyahu and people in his cabinet could travel, I imagine it become smaller and smaller of late anyway. This isn't going to change anything on the ground, is it?
It's not going to change anything on the ground. I mean, it will. So let's assume that those warrants get arrested, and whether there's a ceasefire before then or after then, those warrants get issued, and then there's trials for these people. The world then, if they are found guilty, the world certainly becomes much smaller for them. You can imagine the Prime Minister of Israel or the Defense Minister of Israel being afraid to travel to even a country like Britain, which is a signatory to the Rome Statute and therefore does recognize it. Some European countries have already said that they, not exactly in these words, but basically that they welcome the steps taken by the ICC. These are allies of Israel, and if they're welcoming it now, if there's a guilty verdict being found, that means that their doors will not be open for these two and perhaps later other Israeli politicians. So on the ground for the people in Gaza, it will make no difference whatsoever. Clearly, I mean, one could even cynically argue that it will have the opposite effect. If these two people feel that they're already being tried and will be found guilty of war crimes, well, why not go all out and nothing worse can happen. But in the medium term, certainly there will be that kind of effect when they try to visit other countries.
The other story from that region, Na'eem, of course, the death of the Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, very unexpected, a helicopter crash. As I understand it, there has to be an election in 50 days, which is not a very long time. Any way of working out how that will happen? I think there's a council that determines who can stand and who cannot. I presume there might be a limited field again?
There will be a limited field, and partly because of the time. I mean, you look at less than 2 months for groups to prepare and candidates to prepare, to submit their documents, etc. Immediately, of course, the Raisi's deputy has taken over as president, and he will run the office until the election. But there's a very small time span. The election will take place, and what usually happens is that all electoral candidates submit their applications to what is called the Guardians Council, which then goes through those and approves or doesn't approve particular candidates based on a whole range of criteria. So it will be a limited field. It always is. How limited is always the question in Iranian elections.
Na'eem, I mean, all of this came after Iran had launched its first direct attacks on Israel, in which no one died, but after Israel had launched its own attacks on Iranian people and Iranian leaders in Syria. I would imagine that in Iranian politics, the question of whether or not this was an accident or not could become quite important.
It could. I mean, I'm not seeing from Iran any kind of strong official speculation about that. I'm seeing it a lot on social media, which, whether we should take that seriously or not is another matter. But the Iranians certainly have not said that they believe it was an assassination and so or so was responsible. They're playing it somewhat low-key. And so the implication might, either they want to not say anything until they have a proper investigation, or that at this stage they don't believe there's any reason to suspect that there was foul play. Personally, I'd be very surprised if, so the automatic assumption for a culprit would be Israel, of course. I'd be very surprised if that were the case. There's really not much to gain. There's more to gain from assassinating the head of the Islamic Republic Guard Corps than the president and foreign minister, the two of them in this case, because it's not going to make any change to Iranian politics, to foreign policy, or anything else. All it's done is that it's hastened the election, and it has ruled out Raisi as the successor to the supreme leader. he was in the running for that, and many people say he was a shoo-in for it. So he's no longer in the running for that. But otherwise, neither Israel nor the United States would really gain anything strategically or diplomatically, politically by killing these two politicians.
Okay, so there'll be no change of direction in Iranian politics as a result of this in any way?
No.
Na'eem Jeenah, always appreciate the time. Thank you very much indeed. Senior researcher at the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflection. In a moment.